Some people invest in index funds. Me, I invest in reusing tea bags. Why put on the heat when I can just wear all my clothes at once? Furniture? That's a waste of money. I sit on my suitcase. It's a chair and a closet. Okay, hold it. That's not true. I'm not that extreme. Ugh, I'm boiling. I can't wait to take this off. But I do consider myself a frugal person. So today I want to share why I'm so frugal and why I don't feel like I am depriving myself. Frugal versus cheap. I was unclear myself about the difference between frugal living and being cheap. That's why I never really made a video about frugal living, because I thought it meant being cheap. But they're actually two different things. For me, being frugal means being smart and intentional with my money, whereas someone who's cheap is someone who just saves money for the sake of it. They care more about price than about quality. I'll give you a few examples. A frugal person may buy a well-made jacket that lasts years, whereas a cheap person buys a cheap jacket, the cheapest jacket really that they can find, even if it only lasts a season. Frugal living might be using a coupon at a buffet, whereas a cheap person will go to that same buffet at 1 p.m. and then stays until 5 p.m. so he gets 2 meals for the price of 1. When you're cheap, you don't spend money and deprive yourself of things in life. A frugal person also cares about saving money, but they look beyond that and ask, what value does this add to my life? As a frugal person, there are many things that I don't spend money on, like clothes. When I buy them, they're often on sale and I don't buy name brands. But I'm not cheap. There are things that I do spend money on, like my standing desk or healthy foods. How I was raised. My parents told me the value of money. They were poor during the first years of my life. My dad was unemployed for 2 years, couldn't find a job, no matter how many job applications he sent out. And my mom lost her job when she got pregnant with me. That still happened back then, different times. The tiny house we lived in until I was about 4 or 5 years old had a toilet outside, and my dad had to defrost it in winter before we actually could go to the toilet. Eventually, my dad was able to find a job again, thankfully. We moved, and I'd say for the rest of my childhood, we were a middle-class, 6-person household that got by on mostly one income. I never felt I wanted for anything, and that's because my parents were smart with their money. They never took on debt other than a mortgage for the house. I also had a Christian upbringing, so in church I'd hear messages about money like, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Or this one, no one can serve 2 masters. You cannot serve both God and money. I didn't always like the choices my parents made. My mom would often buy the store brands instead of the name brands and would go shopping at the cheapest supermarket for most of the groceries. We also rarely went out for dinner. And when we did, I knew I shouldn't order something on the expensive side of the menu. That's one reason I started working as soon as I could. I wanted to have my own money. So I would clean my parents' bathroom for pocket change really, or wash the neighbor's car. I had this money box where I could put the coins I made and they would roll into the right box. Guilders with guilders and pennies with pennies. The first job I could legally do was deliver papers before school, which meant getting up at 5 a.m. for 6 days a week. And later on, I was also a shelf stacker in the local supermarket, and I worked as a pizza delivery boy for a couple of years. It was the mid-1990s, and it was a dream of mine to own my own PC. So after a year of delivering papers, I was able to buy a computer with my parents' permission. I think it was 1994 or 1995, and I still remember the specs. 486 SX25, 4 megabytes of RAM, 260 megabytes hard drive, and MS-DOS operating system. With my paperboy salary, that took a whole year of saving 95% of what I made. And I credit my parents' frugality for teaching me how to save that money for a whole year. It is stressful living in debt. I graduated with student loans. Not too much by American standards, around 20,000 euros, but it's still a lot of money and I had to pay it off. When you're in debt, the money you make, or a good chunk of it, is not really yours, because it has to go to paying off your debt. And that's stressful. It limits your choices, because instead of spending the money that you make on things that you enjoy, or investing it in your future, you're stuck paying off debt. And that can weigh on you mentally. If you live paycheck to paycheck, or your debt is huge, it can start to feel like you will never be able to pay off those loans. And you may feel like you're behind in life, with your friends and family just passing you by left and right and disappearing in the distance. There's also the emotional weight, the guilt and regret for taking on the debt in the first place, the shame for not being able to pay it off, and the fear of losing your job, which would mean immediate financial disaster. I'm frugal so I don't have to take on debt. I don't want that stress in my life. Not having debt gives me peace of mind. Money is freedom. As long as I remember, I've wanted to be free. Not the freedom to stay in 5-star hotels and go jet skiing all day, but the freedom to control my time. In The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel writes, "The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today." And that's exactly it. The freedom to choose what to do, when to do it, and with whom to do it, for as long as you like. It's invaluable. Freedom is the greatest return on investment that money can offer. Being in debt and having high fixed costs every month keeps you tied to a job that you may hate but feel like you can't get out of. Frugal living offers a way out. Depending on the amount of debt you're in or how high your fixed costs are, that may not happen immediately. But at least you're building toward a better future where you have more freedom. At first, maybe it's only the freedom to dream of a better future. But then the next step is actually believing in that dream because you're now taking concrete steps towards creating it. Having money gives you the freedom of choice. The choice to pursue a different career. Maybe you want to take some time off for a sabbatical, to travel, to take care of a loved one, maybe to take care of your own health. A decade ago, I left my job as a corporate lawyer. Unfortunately, I hadn't saved up that much because I was living a different lifestyle back then. I was spending most of the money that I was making. But I had really bad headaches for a really long time that ultimately led me to quitting my job. And I didn't go back to law again. I had to reinvent myself. Living frugally has allowed me to try different things. And I never had to return to law. I did go broke almost a few times. And I've never made the kind of money that I was making as a lawyer since I quit my job. But I've always been able to cover my basic needs. And now I'm still living frugally, and that allows me to build this YouTube channel. And that is something I really love doing. And, I'm really trying to build this up to a level where it will provide me with a sustainable income. I'm not a genius. So the easiest way to have money seems to be to make a lot of it. But the reality is that I'm not a genius. There was a time when I would fall for those articles about, the morning routines of successful people like Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs. And I think hey, these people have the same 24 hours in a day as I do. And look what they achieved. Maybe I should try their morning routine. But I've since realized that the chances are very small that I will come up with a product idea that will make me a millionaire. And then have the resources to bring it to market, all while fighting off competitors who are trying to grab a piece of the pie. Plus, it's not just hard work. There's also luck involved. Right time, right place, right person. And I don't know if I'm that lucky. But you can save a lot of money by being frugal, especially if you're not a high-income earner. $1 here and $1 there, it can really add up and make a difference at the end of the day. If you'd like more tips on this, I write a newsletter about how to live with less and bring more calm into your life. That sounds interesting? There's a sign-up link in the description below. I don't like working 9 to 5. When I was in law school, I worked as a call center agent on the side in the inbound customer service department. So this one time I had to start at 9 a.m., but I was 2 minutes late. So I rushed in, apologized, and was ready to get started when my supervisor, who was only a few years older than me, confronted me about it. And she said, "Peter, you're not just 2 minutes late, you need to be here 5 minutes before 9 a.m. so you can start receiving calls at 9 a.m. And I said, but I don't get paid from 5 minutes before 9 a.m. I only get paid from 9 a.m. And then she dropped the bomb. She said, "I'm deducting 15 minutes from your pay." I was like, "What? I'm only 2 minutes late." So, okay, then I'll go get a coffee and I'll be back at 9:15. She's like, "No, you start now. This 15 minutes deductment is a punishment." I don't know about you, but I don't like being micromanaged. I don't feel we're put on this earth to clock in 40 plus hours a week, staring at a computer screen in a cubicle and being called out for not putting cover sheets on our TPS reports by 10 different people.
I have 8 different bosses right now.
I beg your pardon?
8 bosses.
8?
8, Bob. So that means that when I make a mistake, I have 8 different people coming by to tell me about it. That's my only real motivation, is not to be hassled. That and the fear of losing my job. But Bob, that'll only make someone work just hard enough not to get fired.
As someone who is frugal, I don't need much. And that gives me the freedom to not have to work a job like that anymore. But honestly, I'd rather not work that much at all. Maybe saying that out loud is like swearing in the church, but there, I said it. And I think that most people deep down feel the same, even if they don't express it. One of the exercises that's often recommended when you feel stuck in your job or business is to ask yourself, what would you do if you were a millionaire? And the idea is that whatever the answer is, you do more of that. However, that's a filtered question. It assumes that you'd still be working, just on something you find more meaningful. But work isn't everything in life. If I were financially independent, I would not work 40 hours a week. Sure, I'd probably do some work, prioritizing the tasks that really matter, that move the needle, but I'd also spend time doing things that I find meaningful that don't generate any profit, that really have nothing to do with making money, like reading books for hours on end or spending more time with my loved ones without being on the clock. Sure, I can do those things now as well to some extent, but there's always this pressure to allocate a significant part of my week to making money. And if you have a job, showing up is mandatory. Frugal living might not make you financially independent, but it gives you a lot more freedom to design your work life on your own terms. I don't care about a Ferrari. It's not about the sports car, but what it stands for. One day, authors Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller were at a party given by a billionaire. And Vonnegut asked Heller, "How does it make you feel to know that our host made more money yesterday than your novel did in its entire history?" To be clear, that novel is Catch-22, which is considered one of the most significant novels of the 20th century, and it sold millions of copies. So Heller replied, "I have something that our host doesn't, the knowledge that I have enough." There's this quote by Epictetus that I like. "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." And I think that's spot on. I don't chase wealth so I can buy stuff and show off. A private jet, a villa with a pool, a Ferrari. I don't care about these things. And thus, buying a new thing creates this temporary feeling of joy. But it never lasts. And in many cases, it can create this cycle of dissatisfaction as the novelty of each item wears off. Not to mention the growing amount of clutter in your home. And meanwhile, your wallet is empty. In Lost and Found, Janine Roth writes, "Enough cannot be in something we can touch or buy or have, like money or a thin body or up boots. Enough isn't an amount. It's a relationship to what you already have." Happiness and fulfillment aren't found in possessions. They come from within, from experiences, from relationships, from personal growth. And when you know that, it's easy to live frugally because you know you have enough. The more things you own, the more they own you. Sometimes, just for fun, I go to these real estate websites to marvel at the properties that are available for sale. These big mansions, castles sometimes even. But then I have a reality check. I'll look at that garden and think like, man, that probably requires a full-time gardener. And the heating bill must be astronomical. The more things you own, the more they can start to own you. I mentioned Fumio Sasaki's silent to-do list before on this channel. And the idea is that everything you own has its own wants and needs, like it has its own personality. The coffee maker wants to be used to brew coffee, the TV wants to be used to watch your favorite shows on. And they all send these subtle, silent messages to you every time you see them, adding up to is potentially massive silent to-do list. Because I live frugally, I have fewer things that send me those messages. And the things I own, I brought them into my home intentionally. So the things that I own, they make my life better. They serve me, they don't own me. With the cost of living crisis and so many people living in debt, I feel frugal living should be the norm in society. Because if you can control money, you can have more control in your life, and that will give you more options. If you want to learn more about this idea of the silent to-do list, I made a separate video about that, which you can watch right here. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you got some value out of it, and I'd love to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.